Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems Podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist working in this industry for 24 years and counting. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment friendly public transportation. Our guest for this fortnight is David Morley. David is an internationally recognized developer of global minded and engaging leaders, teams, and organizations. For 25 years, David has worked with organizations across a wide variety of industries in the areas of culture change, engagement, multinational collaboration, M&A cultural alignment, business transformation, global project kickoffs, and leader coaching development. In this time, he has successfully delivered these initiatives across many countries, including Germany, France, Portugal, Poland, Slovakia, Romania, Italy, Finland, United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, UAE, Qatar, India, Nigeria, Singapore, Hong Kong, and United States, Peru, South Africa. In this time, he has also been delivering these services to parts of rail sector, both here in Australia and abroad. David, welcome to Railway Transportation Systems Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Raman. It's really nice to be with you.
Before I start my interview, I would like to know, was that holiday or was that work? So many countries.
Well, look, it was work for me. It was holiday for my wife, I'm sure. But but no, it was work, and you always do try to find those moments when you can really get away from the work to really more deeply appreciate the culture and the country that that you're working in. Yeah, good question.
David, can you tell us your professional journey and try to highlight transport industry?
Look, my professional journey is really an interesting one, and I would say it's very eclectic. Finding my way to where I am today, and along that path, finding myself, almost constantly in and out of the rail sector. I would have to say that if I think back, my first memory of the rail sector was my dad. My dad was a train driver. He drove passenger trains, freight trains, coal trains, all of that sort of thing when it was the State Rail Authority of New South Wales. And I did ride on a few trips with my dad back in those days. And that was in the 70s, a long time ago. But my journey really, looped back eventually, once I really started to understand a lot about culture, about national cultures, organizational culture, safety culture, and a lot of my work, as my career progressed, really tended to evolve around those areas and everything around that, whether that's strategy, leadership development, supporting groups to be able to work more effectively in those very complex global matrixed those sorts of environments. So for sure, I would keep coming back to rail. So whether that was with Thales, working globally with the Thales organization, which was a really great time in my career, and I was very fortunate to work in the global business and support many rail projects in many of those countries in Poland, the ETCS project there, and Austria, supporting and coaching a lot of high potential leaders in the ground transportation division, supporting big project kickoffs, for rail projects in South Africa, in Hong Kong, in France, and of course here in Australia. So that time in Thales, I think, really for me helped me bring together, and I suppose if you like, also validate for me that my way of thinking and my way of approaching the development of groups, from that cultural and group dynamic perspective, really can work in a sector, like the rail and other, related, technical environments. And of course, since Thales, I've done a lot of work with Transport for New South Wales, Alstom, MTR, some work with Sistra as well, and a little bit of work with Queensland Rail as well. So, yeah, all in that area of supporting more collaborative ways of working, supporting leaders to enable those ways of working in an environment that I think is not a naturally easy environment to do what you do. You know, it's out of all the different industries I work with, I would have to say that rail is quite unique because, you know, I think that it's the one of these sectors, if you like, where you are so close to the end user, to the customer. You know, it's something that's integral, you know, to the lives of so many people. So it's important to people, and they may not, you know, consciously express that, but, you know, you talk to a lot of people, and you know, if one train is delayed or a bus is late, you'll know about it, yeah, because it's integral, you know, to the lives of people, and so from that perspective, I think that yeah, that's why it's a really unique space, and there are a lot of external pressures that I think can make it a bit more complex to be a leader in this sector.
I like that uniqueness, and I'm very proud to be the part of unique. That makes the difference.
Yeah.
Lots of countries, as I said, and lots of variation, lots of companies in your railway story, David. Especially the highlights were coaching. So why is it important to have development and coaching of global-minded leaders?
Look, I think that the rail sector is, I believe, yeah, the rail industry is a very global. In Australia, for example, we don't have all of the skills and the expertise needed, you know, for the nature of projects that are being conducted. So we do need to borrow from other countries, and so immediately, you know, just looking at it through that lens, you know, we need to, as an industry, know how to not just, you know, attract people that can align with and really contribute in a very healthy way to a project, but attracting is one thing. But once we get expats, you know, and people to a project who aren't, you know, Australian born, we need to understand how to work with them. We need to understand what it means to engage with them. We need to understand what motivation means, you know, for people in those areas. We need to, and that's not easy for someone who is a leader who is, you know, born in a single country, who has worked in a single country, worked on a lot of different projects in that environment. But, you know, it's one thing to lead people from your own culture. It's another to lead people from a variety of industries. And Australia, by its very nature as well, is very, you know, multicultural. You know, so so it's normal to have very culturally diverse teams in any case. And broader than that, if we look outside of Australia, you know, if you look at, you know, most of the big projects that are happening, whether it's signaling, whether it's rolling stock, digital, whatever, you know, all of them are borrowing talent from lots of different countries that are coming together, you know, to bring a project to you know, to life. So from that perspective, I think it's important to be able to step back, you know, to really embrace some of those competencies and beliefs that can help you as a leader be more effective. You know, things like being able to suspend judgment, you know, to really try to read between the lines, to be able to take a more, if you like, strategic or helicopter view of what's happening, you know, to be a bit in touch with some of the cultural nuances, you know, as well. Because I think if you are leading a project or a program, or a large portfolio of work, and there's a high likelihood that you'll have many different cultures involved. You'll be interfacing with different countries, and that goes for everyone. That goes for the contractors. It goes for the subcontractors. It goes for government. It's the same thing. So I think it's really critical that leaders today in the industry find a way to develop that skill set and that mindset as well, because I think that's the way it'll remain, for some time. It's the nature of the industry.
Correct. I completely concur, especially in this time where we have a huge resource shortage and we bring people from various countries. I think this coaching and leadership would generally help the whole industry, not just one particular company.
Yeah.
And I completely concur that it isn't easy. And this work you took up requires a lot of work backstage, knowing all the workload and the hard work. What made you enter in this industry? And how different are railway leaders with respect to other industries?
Oh, look, when you ask the question around why did I enter this industry, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So if you look at it through the lens of the work that I do, I would have to say that for me personally, I like to think that the work that I do makes a difference. If you can impact one person, just one person, and help them to have a better experience at work, and let's face it, the work that not just I do, but other people in our sector, the work that we do isn't just about what happens at work. It impacts quality of life. It impacts, how you are when you get home. It's not like you can have one without the other. So I came into this line of work, believing that you could contribute to the greater good, and that we really can, make a difference. And there's a loop with that, because whilst ever you're doing that, a really important part of that is that you're also, continually learning and growing yourself. So, the link there, I think, to, looking at leaders in the railway, in the rail sector, for example, and are they different to leaders in other industries? Yes and no. I'll start with a no. No, because, we're all human. We're all impacted by the same fears, the same concerns. For example, am I good enough? Am I making the right decision? It's, the sorts of factors that impact who I am around, my belief system, we all have belief system. We all, feel, we all behave. So at that deeper level, we are all the same, and we do often share many of the same concerns and the same wishes for what we want from our career. Where I see the differences tend to come through more, I think, in a more nuanced way and often contextually. So, for example, I'll just tell you a little story which relates to what I mentioned earlier about, the very nature of this industry being high profile sometimes and very close to the end user. So you can imagine a situation where you've got an organization which really does care for its people. It does really, really good work, has a really solid reputation. It's bringing expats into country. But the context and the nature of their work means that the work that they're doing is high profile. It's in the media. It's and because it's in the media and there's a strong relationship with if you like, it's government projects, of course. So there's that oversight, to ensure that things are on track, if you'll excuse the pun. When those expats, for example, if we stick with the idea of the expats, when they're coming into country, they land. The organisation takes care of their well-being in terms of they've got a house, the kids are in school, all that kind of stuff. But when the leader comes to work or the technical expert comes to work, the absolute focus is get to work. This is a project environment. It's a tough environment. If we screw up, what happened? We'll be on the front page of the newspaper. And so it's a really task-oriented, task project-focused environment. And so what that means is that, just quite naturally, this is absolutely not unique to this case. I've seen it around the world in many instances. What we then tend to see is people from those cultural backgrounds. If you've got multiple cultures, they'll then stick together, during break times, after work. But that has a direct influence on collaboration in the project. It has a direct influence on communication, because people just feel such pressure to get to work and get to work quickly, because if we don't, the perception is we're not working hard enough to meet goals and objectives, and we'll end up in the media. So you then have factors around psychological safety come into play. How safe do people feel? The general feeling then becomes one of, well, the organisation only cares about what I do, not who I am. Because we naturally tend to be such a task-oriented and project-oriented industry, that's where we focus. And so therefore it's natural that, if things go wrong, and if we're not great at, resolving conflict, having those hard, difficult conversations, that we resort back to and revert back to, being it's all about the contract rather than a bunch of people who need to have a conversation and work out how things really can be. That's the ways in which the railway leaders are different, because it's such it can be such a unique space, such a unique environment with a lot of external pressures. And I know that they're felt as much by government as they are by the consortias, the contractors, the subcontractors, all the way down the line. And so for that reason, I think there needs to be greater focus for railway leaders on developing that skill set and that mindset around how to enable better conversations, better collaboration, as opposed to, hey, let's just revert back to the contract because that's the nature of our industry.
That's a great answer. I have no doubt about your contribution and capabilities, and you really touched my next question, which was about how railway leaders and how would you think that would benefit the industry. And you spoke about collaboration and change and innovation. But I got a different observation. We as railway leaders, very convenient or very happy to speak about change, innovation, but no one opens up when it comes to vulnerability and shame. How can we open up? Why is this?
Oh, look, Raman, that's just such a big question and a very important question as well. I would say that there are a couple of aspects to this. So if we start at the level of individuals, you know, who I am as a leader, there are different aspects to that, right? And part of that is, you know, how I've learned to be a leader. Yeah. And so if you think about it in that context, if you've come up through a really hard project environment, you know, in your career and you've not had any role models that let you see what it means to be okay with sharing, with opening up, with being a bit vulnerable, you know, then, you know, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And so you've got that piece. Culturally speaking, from a national culture perspective, Australia, if we look at, well, not just Australia, if you look at the Anglo countries, yeah, and let's face it, a lot of our expertise does come out of the UK, okay, as an example, where increasingly it's out of India as well. And of course, we have a good body of expertise here in Australia. Having said that, in the Anglo world, the Anglo world have very tough cultures. And in a tough culture, it's about being the best. It's about being competitive. It's about status. You know, so you know, those factors are really, really important. And so if you think about it, you know, if we're driven, if we're quite, and these are quite individualist cultures as well. So it's about individual drive and seeking to be the best. And hold on, let's add another layer. We're also very short-term oriented culturally. So what that means is, and there's two factors here that I'll call out. We're very short-term oriented, which means we're always busy. We never have enough time. Things need to be done quickly. Being an individualist country, that also means that we open the door to trust based on competence, based on what we do. So that's where we have one of the biggest conflicts and one of the biggest challenges between Anglo employees and employees from across the Middle East, India, Asia, for example, and Eastern Europe, because those cultures are very collectivist and the door to trust is opened by trusting who you are. Okay, so it takes a bit longer to build trust. And so if we just stick with the Anglo example though, let's just bundle that together. Okay, at a deeper level, I'm driven to build trust based on competence, based on what I do. And we're very short-term oriented, so I better get down to work and I better do that quickly. All right. And we're a tough culture. So what comes with that? Being competitive, being driven, really clear, unambiguous goals and objectives where we're driving towards that achievement. That is not a good formula for natural vulnerability, for naturally sharing what's gone wrong. And the other thing is we're quite an indulgent culture as well. So what comes with that is we will easily lean towards sharing the stuff that's going well, but we're not so good at easily and more naturally focusing on the stuff that's not working well. So those factors alone, you know, just on that level, don't make it easy. It doesn't mean we can't be vulnerable. It doesn't mean we can't share the stuff that's going wrong. It's just not natural. It's just not easy to do that. Whereas if we look at our colleagues and the people who come from, as I said earlier, India, Asia, Middle East, Eastern Europe, South America, for example, in that part of the world, you have more collectivist. So that means it's about taking time to build a more enduring trust, to really get to know who you are. And many of those cultures are also more longer term oriented. And so the belief is that we should take the time, and we have the time to do that. So you can imagine coming into a very short term oriented, tough driven culture where it is, hey, get to work. Because you need to prove that we made the right decision in bringing you across or hiring you, that just, fuels that feeling of being naturally able to be vulnerable. And then, of course, you've got organizational culture. Does the culture of the organization make it easy for people to share? Or is the culture one of being task focused? We're not thinking too far ahead. We're not a learning organization as such. Yeah. So it's just more inwardly focused, get the job done. And what's really interesting here is organizations can talk about how they would like to be. Yeah. And they can talk about saying, but we want to be open. We want to be inclusive. We want to, we want to make it psychologically safe in many ways, for people to be able to be open, to share. We can talk about that, but if the culture really isn't that way, then you're not going to be able to do that. So that's why the question you asked is such a big one, and I've tried to bundle a whole bunch of factors into one response, but I hope that answers that.
No, David, I really concur with you. I agree. It's not an easy question, and we cannot answer that in a 30-minute podcast anyway.
Yeah.
You made me glued, so I was attentively listening to you. It was wise words you spoke. I really agree that we as an industry has to take that. I would personally love to see these changes and reap the benefits from it. So to see this happen, can you tell me what are the steps in the learning process, and how would Ponte Valley help us to gain this unique competency?
Oh, look, there's, like the previous answer, there's probably a bunch of different things that need to be happening to give you the best opportunity to move forward. And even if you did some of these, I think, it would still move you in a healthy direction. Look, I think you've really got to ensure that you've got really healthy supporting structures that start at the organizational level. I think organizationally, you've got to have the structures and the design that supports being able to be open, to be vulnerable, to be more global minded. You've got to be really clear around your direction, your strategy, because without that clarity at all levels of the business, it makes it harder for leaders, to tap into that true north and be clear around what we're here to do. I think organizationally, we need to also have a really clear understanding of our culture. Not just the way we are today, but the way we need to be executing on that strategy. And they're the things I mentioned earlier. Are we open? Are we more task or people focused? What's our customer orientation? Are we more goal or means oriented? Those sorts of factors. And then, once you start to take a look at those factors and really start to reflect on and think of those factors, are they enabling creating an enabling environment for leaders to be more global minded, to be better people leaders, to be more engaging, to be able to work, with different cultures. Once you've looked at it at that level, then, or in parallel, you can be looking at development, and that's whether that's coaching, whether that's, programs, specifically, that support leaders to be more engaging in complex environments. So, for example, our Lead to Engage program is specifically focusing on, how to be engaging in those really complex, or those VUCA environments, really. And quite interestingly, I think, and we underestimate this, I think, in most countries, if you're in a complex organization, a matrix structure, for example, leading in a matrix is not the same as leading in a simple structure where I just have one boss, one team, and I know where I'm investing my energy. The minute you become a matrix of any description, it's a different leadership style, and there are different skills and mindsets. Once you become a leader, you start that journey as a leader in a matrix organization, which pretty much every medium to large sized rail organization is, including government. The minute you start that journey, you really need to switch to understanding that your role becomes one more of, how do I enable stuff to get done? I really need to be an enabler. I need to enable collaboration. I need to enable for my people. I need to be removing obstacles, because once you become a matrix, you are pretty much always getting stuff done, getting work done through other groups or with other groups. It's the only way it works. And so as a leader, it's a different mindset. And when you balance that with, or integrate that with being a project leader or someone leading in a project environment, the two aren't natural bedfellows. Project is all about really clear, unambiguous goals, and driving towards a very clearly defined outcome. Being a leader in a matrix is all about, working the gray areas It's all about, trying to bring a bit of certainty when there doesn't seem to be certainty. It's all about, managing those networks, to get a really healthy outcome. So I think that that's where the development needs to be. And that's the value that we bring is in helping an organization to look at itself. Are they are they creating that environment that supports all of those things to happen, and also supporting the leaders to be able to work in that environment?
Amazing stuff. Really great work, David. I really appreciate
Thanks.
the value you bring into this industry because, especially technically, people who generally thinks about rolling stock, signaling, and track and all, this is something really important for us to get this competency into our profiles. You really spoke about organizational structure, how to develop supporting structures, direction, strategy, culture. Amazing. I don't think 30 minutes is enough to cover all these key topics. And yeah, before I let you go, I want one more answer
Yeah.
from you. What is that one piece of advice to our listeners?
That's a good question. I would have to say, don't try to be someone you're not. I think there's often so much pressure, I've just been talking about being a leader, who is more collaborative, for example. But that doesn't mean you have to give up who you are, okay? Unless it makes sense to let go of some parts of yourself that are healthy or aren't contributing. So I think the minute we feel like we've got to give up who we are and try to be someone else, then leading in any capacity, especially in complex environments, is never good for anyone, least of all, the leader themselves. So don't try to be someone you're not. Don't give up who you are unless it makes sense to do that. And there's no harm in being a bit eclectic. Borrow from techniques for leading from different sources, from the most obscure places, if you think it fits with who you are and will help you to be a more engaging leader. There you go.
What a great advice, David. It's pretty much a quote. Don't try to be someone who you are not. Wow, that's really wise words. And thank you, David. Thank you for your time, sharing your insights with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Raman. Really enjoyed it.
I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry. Contact me on railwaytransportationsystems@gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. See you next fortnight. Until then, stay safe and take care of yourself.